Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I was saying that I've been given a guide to follow for my presentation, but inshallah, if there are questions afterwards, there will be time. So the first question is about my family background. So for those of you who, and actually I should first preface by saying my 4 youngest children are here with me today, and one of the reasons why I thought this was a great idea to do, because I have 2 teenagers, and there are so few joys in having teenagers, but one of them is to embarrass them. So, alhamdulillah, I'm sure they're going to be very embarrassed this evening. So anyway, I happen to have a very ethnic name. So Moira McGuire is a very Irish name, although there are people who will be like, oh, Moira, is that Greek or is that French? It's very Irish, and I was raised, both my parents are Irish Americans. There were 4 of us. My mom had 4 kids in 4.5 years, so we were all very close in age. And we were also raised very Catholic, because you can't be Irish and not Catholic. So there was a lot of religion in my house. There wasn't a lot of politics directly, but it was kind of an indirect message. There were certain things that you never did. You didn't get divorced. And you were never anything other than Catholic. That was it. So we went to all Catholic schools. My dad taught at Catholic University for almost 50 years. He went there. That's where he met my mom. My mom teaches there. My sister teaches there. You know, went to Catholic elementary school, went to Catholic high school, went to Catholic college. So very, very Catholic. And I loved my upbringing. I really did. I didn't have, I'm not the type of person who accepts Islam and then kind of trashes where I came from, because it wasn't a matter of hating it. I just think that probably by the time I was in my teenage years, I kind of felt as though there was something more. I wasn't really sure what it was, but I just felt like there was something more. And oftentimes the way things were presented to us, so, you know, as Catholics, here's what we believe, and you just have to believe it. Doesn't necessarily have to make sense. And I didn't like that. I remember the priest used to come in, and when the priest would come in, everybody would stand up. I mean, it was a sign of respect. Everybody would stand up out of their chairs. You didn't do that with the nuns, but with the priest came in, you better stand up. And they would talk about how important it was to treat your body well, and, you know, that it's God's temple. And then, you know, you'd see them out smoking in the parking lot and, you know, drinking. And they never had a good answer other than, you know, just accept it. Or the Trinity, you know, just never really, I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but that math never, like, kind of added up for me. So, but alhamdulillah, it was. So when I was in college, I started my exploration of other faiths. And I looked at a lot of them. And none of them were, I mean, there were certain aspects in all of them that I found kind of attractive, but none of them was really speaking to me. So I just thought, okay, that's it. I'm just meant to be a Catholic. I wasn't going to church. Hadn't been to church in a while, but if we were in a room like this and everybody said, okay, all the Catholics stand up and go over there, I would have stood up and gone over there. And then I started working at a hotel downtown, and I had a coworker from the Ivory Coast who was Muslim, and he would talk to me about it, you know, from time to time, because he'd go off places and pray, and you know, through my college course, I'd already learned a little bit about Islam, and I was at the hotel for a number of years because I worked there while I was in nursing school, and. Huh? They can't hear? Oh, sorry. Wow. I've never been told I was too quiet. Sorry. So anyway, I was at the hotel for a number of years going through nursing school, and one of the corpsmen who worked there, one of the bellmen who worked there, you know, we just kind of struck up a conversation and started talking, and that was 21 years ago. And we ended up getting married, and this was my husband, and he's Ethiopian. And so when he asked me to marry him, I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And he said, well, it's really important that the kids are raised Muslim. And I was like, I'm so cool with that, because I really, there are a lot of things that I admired about it. And I've never been much of a gambling woman, so I thought, okay, if you're praying 5 times a day and you can't get it right, like you're in trouble. So I thought, no, it's a great way to raise kids. But it was definitely his thing, it wasn't mine. I was like, I'm cool, we'll raise the kids Muslim. And so we did that for a while. And so Zakaria, our oldest, I had 2 kids. So Zakaria was my third, my husband's first. And we decided that we wanted to send him to school, just part-time, so he could learn some Quran and hang out with other kids. So we sent him to Al-Huda. And that's, I think, where I started to get a lot of exposure to the sisters. And when I would go over there, I'd always cover, because it was just, in my mind, the respectful thing to do. Like, you don't go into somebody's house and, don't behave appropriately. So I'd go over there, and I think, looking back, there were a lot of sisters who, because I covered, just assumed that I was Muslim. And I remember one sister in particular, a few years before I took my Shahada, somebody said to her, well, Sister Moira is not Muslim. And she was like, Astaghfirullah, can you say such a thing? But, so I got a lot of information. I got a lot of exposure. And but again, I've met a lot of people who have converted, reverted, who it's a very short and simple process. They read the Quran, they meet somebody, and boom, they're taking their Shahada. I would like to say mine was quick. So let's see, my husband and I have been together 21 years, and I took my Shahada 8 years ago. So. So for 13 years, that man very patiently waited for me to see the light. So, subhanAllah. So, I guess the first time I heard about Islam was in college, but, it was a number of years, a number of experiences. So when I took my Shahada, I was 36. And I remember some of the sisters had a party. They were so excited. They'd been waiting for this for a very long time. And they were like, oh, this is your first real salah. Come on, we're going to have you lead it. And I was like, have me lead it? I don't even know what I'm going to have everybody moonwalking. You do not want me leading this salah. Trust me. I really don't know what I'm doing. What or who encouraged or influenced me to become Muslim? I will tell you that we were at Al-Huda. We've been there since 1999, so we've been there a long time. And when we first would go, it was for my husband to pray. So I'd sit in the car while he ran in, for his salah, and I'd see all the, sisters go by, and they looked so exotic and so mysterious. And then when we started taking Zakaria to school, then I was out walking around, and there were definitely some. Just kind of events that happened that maybe weren't very positive. Some sister would just kind of brush past you in the hall and bump into you and not say anything. And at that time, I think because I was just struggling, it really, you'd meet an amazing person and it'd be one step, and you'd have a negative experience and it seemed to be 10 steps in reverse, Again, not really equal math, but it didn't have to make sense. It's just kind of how it was for a long time. And even my approach to Islam, it was very cerebral. It was very intellectual. Wow, this is lovely. This is really nice. Wow, this is fascinating. And I remember being in the hall one time. I think it was during Ramadan for Tarawih, and one of the brothers was reciting Quran, and he was crying. And I remember it really, sorry, I swore I wasn't going to do it. Anyway, it really touched me, I think, in a way that I didn't anticipate. But there was something about, I thought to myself, here's a grown man. This isn't a 6-year-old, this is a grown man who's reading something. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't know what he's saying. But, I mean, he was close to sobbing. And it was amazing. So it did. It took 13 years of lots of wonderful experiences. But I finally got there. And I will say that my husband was a critical part of it, because he really is an amazingly, he is an amazingly patient person. 13 years waiting and hoping, the whole time having to accept the fact that maybe she would never take her shahada, and having to be, alhamdulillah, okay with that, and he was. So I have undying respect and gratitude for my husband. So what was my family's reaction to my conversion? I think for most of my family members, because again, my husband and I had been married for such a long time, they were like, it's about time. What were you waiting for? I mean, I think they thought I was going to do it a lot sooner. When I called my mom, because before I had a girlfriend who had taken her shahada a few years earlier, and she didn't tell anybody before she did it. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I don't want to do it that way. I want people to know before I do it. So I made sure I called like my older daughter and my mom and my sister, and And so when I called my mom and told her, I got this on the other end of the phone. Like silence for a really long time. And I was like, Mom? And then she said, we all have our own journey to take and our own path. I was like, okay, so that means you're pleased? And again, I think that looking back, culture is an amazingly powerful thing. And I think it's powerful in ways that we don't even appreciate or understand. But, and even when I look at my friends who took their shahada in a, I guess what you would say, a timely or a quick manner, oftentimes they weren't necessarily raised with a very strong religious identity. Or if they were, it wasn't a religious identity that was wrapped up in their ethnicity as well. And you almost have to reinvent yourself to a certain extent. Like you really have to take everything apart that you learned and examine it. And that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I can see, even as I talk to, family members and friends, that it's the kind of work that, not everybody can do. They just, you can see them struggling with it, and they're not going to be able to do it. I used to describe myself as a tightly sealed jar. And, everybody would come along. So every time I had a positive experience, it was like somebody was just kind of loosening that jar a little bit. But I mean, it took a lot of turns at the jar to get that top popped open. And I guess there's some jars that there aren't enough hands and not enough turns. So all in all, I think, the men in my family were kind of like, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, congratulations, that's wonderful. And I did have a coworker who was very angry. And, we still work very closely together, and we've kind of agreed to disagree on, the whole religion thing. But other than that, I don't think anybody, nobody was negative. They were, although I will say there were a number of people, because this was in, excuse me, this was in 2003. So it was a little less than 2 years after 9/11. So a lot of people were curious as to my timing. So they didn't necessarily they didn't want to know why, but they wanted to know why now. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Wow, if you came to this realization in your life, why would you want to put it off? So I thought that was kind of interesting. Have any of my family members taken their shahada? No, they have not. And I don't know, Allahu Alam, Oh, thanks. Hopefully I won't need it anymore, but you never know. Yeah, you know, my parents are older, and they've had this identity for a very long time, and so, you know, we try to live our lives in a very meaningful way that shows people the beauty of Islam, and we just make dua. We just make dua. So the next question is, do I feel the Muslim community adequately embraced and supported me during my transition to Islam? You know, it's interesting because, again, I had been such a part of the community for such a long time that when it happened, everybody was like, woohoo, great, okay, see you later. You know, because I think there was this assumption that I'd been a part of it for such a long time that I probably picked up so much stuff that I was, you know, she's good to go. And again, I think so much of what I've learned has been through relationships. And I love the idea of having mentors, but, you know, mentors really need to be not the type of mentor who feels as though they're about to accomplish a task, but a mentor who understands that he or she is about to enter into a relationship, because the relationship is really where you learn. You know, we started a homeschool group, and subhanAllah, you know, they probably didn't realize it at the time, but all the sisters in the homeschool group, I mean, they were educating me along the way. Like, you know, they may not have been aware of it, and may Allah bless all of them because they're amazing sisters, but that's really how, you know, how you bring people along, because for many people, it is a completely new identity. I mean, you have to think about it. You have to learn, like, what foot to put in what shoe first. I mean, you know, you're almost going back to the beginning on some levels. There's a lot to learn. And so I think for me, it's really about relationships, you know, developing relationships. So what advice would I offer to people considering converting to Islam? Wow. What advice would I offer? Well, I will tell you one thing that I struggled with a little bit, because in Catholicism, you are taught that you can tell a lot about a religion by the people who practice it. And so I kind of came to the Muslim community with that idea, that if you meet wonderful, amazing people, then this is clearly a valuable, you know, religion. And if the people behave badly, then it's not. And you really can't look at it that way, you know? I mean, we're all a work in progress, and we're all struggling to do our best, but we're not perfect, you know? I mean, the deen is, but we're not, and so you really can't. You have to separate the two. You have to be really prepared to separate the two. I don't know. I don't know what other advice I would give. But that was probably the biggest thing that I struggled with. And then, you know, you always get tripped up on like one or two verses in the Quran, you know, because you're like, I don't think so, you know, or so again, I mean, you know, I could have 50 positive experiences. Like, and honestly, when I first read the Quran, you know, it's so unlike the Bible. Although Catholics aren't really big Bible readers. Like you hear the Bible at, you know, Sunday Mass. And actually Sunday Mass is pretty much how you set your watch, because it is 60 minutes. I'm telling you right now, it is timed perfectly. And, but, you know, you don't really read the Bible at any other time during the week. It's pretty much a Sunday thing. So when I read the Quran for the first time, it was just a different format. It was very unusual, and I wasn't accustomed to it. And then I, you know, every time I hear, because I haven't stopped hearing about people's experiences where they opened Quran and read it the first time, and subhanAllah, that was it, they knew. And I always was kind of secretly jealous of that, thinking, wow, I didn't have that experience at all, at all. But anyway, so that is that's the end of my guide. I guess we can take questions. Are there any questions?
Do we have another microphone there? Okay. Well, we need somebody to be the runner. Does anybody has any questions? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Alaikum salam.
Question is about your parents. Have you give them dawah for? Did you try to give them dawah for Islam for your parents or your family, or what's your relations now with them if they are Christian?
MashaAllah, I have a wonderful relationship with both my parents. They are amazing parents. I give them dawah every time I possibly can. You know, my mom is 76, my dad is 85. And you know, it's not for lack of trying, I will tell you that, but you know, they've been in this role for a very long time. And I know a lot of people don't understand like the political and religious aspect of being Irish and Catholic, but it is a powerful thing. It is I mean, you know, the English oppressed the Irish for 800 years. And so even though there's been some sort of like agreement on the island of how things are going to be divided up, don't think for a second that that hasn't stopped. And it's stopped, and I mean, it continues to the extent that, like, you know, my grandmother's from Canada. You know, I think that my mom is like first generation here on one side, third generation on another side. My dad's like second generation on both sides. I mean, it's almost like passed on through the blood. But Allahu Alam, I mean, if it's going to happen, it will happen. But we do have a wonderful relationship with both of them. So.
Assalamu alaikum, sister. This is Imam Ahmad Zara, the Imam of the Masjid. First of all, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to come to be a speaker tonight.
And thank you for
It's
asking
really
me.
great opportunity.
Thank you.
And I enjoyed your talking about your journey to Islam. But my question to you may be a little different, maybe looked at as bizarre question. I think nobody has asked this question before, but this question comes to me all the time because I'm dealing with the people who convert, who accept Islam and come to my office, and then they ask for mentorship and how to be on the track all the time, especially that they came from a different background, different culture, as you mentioned about your struggle with your co-workers or your family or whatever. So what's my question simply, what is the thing that may let a person who accepted Islam and became committed to Islam to leave Islam? So someone who became committed and accepted Islam and converted and without any kind of pressure, but he loves Islam and he realized that Islam is the true way. What's the thing that may happen to him or her in his life or her life that may drive them away from Islam or to leave Islam? Because this thing happened to me many times from sisters or brothers who may have something that take them away from Islam again. So what's this thing in your mind? Thank you.
Okay, so that is, I wouldn't say bizarre, but that's a complex question. I will say that for me personally, if I accepted Islam because my husband is amazing, and honestly, I think if all brothers were like my husband, the entire world would be Muslim, but then I would have converted like the day after we got married. You know, one reason why it took me 13 years is because, partially because of my identity, but I think once I really realized that this was, the right way to lead your life, then I really, I did not want to take my shahada and then become like a hypocrite and not be able to really do it the way it's supposed to be done. Because it's a significant commitment and work when you're not brought up that way. And so what would take someone away from Islam, I would not be able to begin to answer. However, I think that whenever we're in a position that makes us uncomfortable, we revert back to what we know and what's familiar. And so, as they're transitioning and encountering obstacles, if they don't have someone there who's kind of helping them to problem solve it, within this new frame of reference, then they're going to go back to what they knew. And so that's why I think, again, the importance of relationships. You can't just say, okay, I'm a mentor, so my responsibility is to, do you have a copy of Quran? Check. Have you signed up for the Muslim 101 class? Check. Do you have my phone number? You can call me once a month? Check. It can't be a task-oriented mentorship. It really needs to be, we're now entering into a relationship, and I'm going to be, at your beck and call and by your side for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes. So.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Inshallah, I wanted to ask a question about the types of people that you may have come across in terms of the person that you thought was teaching you the deen of Islam, but then as you got a better understanding of Islam and then went back to that individual that taught you the wrong way, was there ever a time that you approached that individual and say, listen, the stuff that you taught me in the beginning of my journey was incorrect, but I've learned this. How come did you taught me the wrong way? I'm not sure if I'm asking the question the right way, but I hope it's clear enough for you to be able to answer. And if not, you can ask me again, and I'll see if I can reword it.
Okay, so were there times when people gave me information that may have been incorrect? Possibly. I think that, by nature, I am a company gal. I'm not the type of person who's going to rock the boat, stir the pot, push the envelope, per se. But I also approach everything with a very healthy dose of, I wouldn't say skepticism, but, and again, I think it's one of the benefits. There are many drawbacks to not being raised Muslim. So, learning Arabic, that's a challenge. If you, grew up learning Arabic, mashallah, that's a nice thing. It's a very nice thing. But I will say that coming from a culture that was not wrapped up in an Islamic identity, I think helped me to kind of question things like, okay, is what you're teaching me culture or religion? And I think even from the beginning, I always approached it in that manner. I remember my husband and I had a lengthy conversation one time about pants. We can't wear pants. Well, what do you mean you can't wear pants? We just can't wear pants. Okay, well, why can't you wear pants? Well, because then, people will see, that you have legs. Okay, well, I'm assuming they already know that I have legs. And I'm like, the sisters who wear the shalwar kameez, those are pants, well, but they're different kinds of pants. So these kinds of conversations, and I'm sure, again, because my husband has amazing patience that he kind of put up with it, but, and I think for me, we're all, again, a work in progress. I have seen myself, move along my path. I've seen other people move along the path. And I like to think that no one has given me information that was wrong with the intention of doing that. And so because of that, I don't think I've ever gone back to anyone. Now, I will say, since you bring it up, and I don't know if this is what you might be referring to, but when I first took my Shahada, there were people who would say, okay, well, now this is what you need to do. And this is the way we do it. And so like the whole 4 schools of thought and nobody ever approached it like, okay, so there are 4 accepted schools and my own personal choice is this one, but there are 3 other opinions. Nobody ever says that. They kind of, or at least the people I encountered, they made their own personal decisions and then they passed on their own personal decisions as though they should be everybody else's own personal decisions. And again, because I kind of question everything before I accept it, I think I was pretty good about trying to figure out what was someone's, personal decision versus, what's accepted amongst all 4 or, what my options were in terms of how I decided to, interpret or understand or practice or accept. But I think people coming, because I'll tell you, whenever somebody takes their Shahada, everybody wants to be around that person. It's like they've got this good energy, you want to rub up and down on their arm, you want to get those good vibes. And then it comes, well, you need to do this. You need to do that. And it's very overwhelming. You go from this incredible high. I mean, I remember when I first took my Shahada, I felt like I weighed 2 pounds. Like if I didn't, weigh my ankles down, that I would have floated up into space. It was amazing. And I remember telling my sister that. I'm like, oh my God, Margaret, this is the most amazing feeling in the world. I said, you know what? Do you understand that I am now sin-free? And she's like, oh my God, that's horrible. I said, what are you talking about? Horrible. This is amazing. She's like, no. She said, that's like getting a new car. Like you're constantly worried about when you're going to get that first ping or that first dent in the car. I was like, it's okay, I'll take it. And I'd like to say that my car is dent-free. It is not. I've pinged it and dented it in the 8 years, but anyway, so I don't know if I answered your question, but inshallah, I did a little. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you that you said you had a lot of positive and negative. You said you had a lot of positive and negative experiences during those 13 years. Could you share some of them so that we could just learn what we do right and what we do wrong when we're dealing with people who are asking about Islam or interested in Islam?
Okay, so well, again, I mean, when we first started going to Al-Huda, there were, again, because, just culturally, people have different sensitivities, and so when I was raised, my grandmother was a big person on being a lady. There were certain things that ladies did and did not do. And so I remember the first time a sister came barreling down the hall and like Zach was walking with me and she almost knocked me over and didn't say a word. And I was like, I was looking for like, the manners police or something. Like, did you see that? It shocked me. Or the first time I was in the souk and everybody's waiting in line and here come a few brothers thinking that, clearly they hold a position that I'm not aware of, but they seem to think that it entitled them to go to the front of the line. And, I try to be a patient person, but I remember the first time I spoke up and everybody's looking at me like I had 3 eyeballs. But I was like, brother, we're all waiting here. We all have places to go and things to do. So you need to get back in line. And again, in the greater scheme of things, are these really important? No, but when you're coming, to a community with a very critical eye, where it could only take one thing to like turn you off, those are generally, the things that will, or if I can just share for a moment, one of my personal pet peeves, the shoes. I don't know why people take their shoes off and leave them right in front of the door. Like, how are people expected to then walk through the door if it's completely covered in shoes? Just take your shoes off and move them to the side a little bit. And again, I've seen this. I've seen this with my husband's family. I mean, it's clearly a cultural thing. And again, I've decided it's my lot in life to then bend over and move all the shoes so that people can actually get through the door. So, inshallah, I'll be rewarded for it. And again, it sounds kind of silly, but that just drives me out of my mind.
We here at the masjid share your sentiments on the shoes. As you can see, we have shoe racks. It's an ongoing battle. We have a brother with a question.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, sister. With the understanding that you've gotten so far from, let me say, from the time you become a Muslim, and with your Christianity background, the knowledge that you've gotten so far, have you ever compared the teaching of these two religions and happen to hallmark any, teaching or any point in the two religions that had really moved you in your mind to confirm within yourself that, well, Islam is really a true religion?
So I remember years ago, I can't even remember how long ago, but it was before, I'm pretty sure it was before I took my Shahada, or maybe right around that time. There was a Muslim woman who had done a documentary on Hajj, and I think it was like the first time, I think it was done at National Geographic, and it was like the first time cameras were allowed inside. And she followed 3 different Muslims on their first Hajj. One was a Nigerian brother, and one was an Indonesian brother, and then one was a sister, actually an Irish-American sister who was in Texas. And my husband and I had gone to National Geographic to see the video, and the Irish-American sister was there to kind of talk about her experience. And I remember, and I can't remember if it was what she actually said or if it was on the video, but she talked about how she kind of knew that this was, it just tied everything up so nicely, answered all the questions that she had. And so while I can't give you specific examples, other than again, the Trinity, original sin, the whole idea of Jesus dying so that, our sins, which aren't really our sins, they were sins from somebody a long time ago, but we've all been paying the price for a very long time. And the Pope and all of those, all of those questions that I had were just answered, through Islam and the Quran. And when I knew it was right was that it kind of completed and finished off what was missing, and it didn't negate anything that I had taken positively from Christianity, which, by the way, some Christians don't believe that Catholics are Christians, so I just thought I'd point that out. They always like to specify Christians and Catholics. Catholics are different because they have all the saints and the statues, and they do weird things with Mary, and so that's the other thing. I mean, even Mary, subhanAllah, in Islam, she is so revered, and that's something that Catholics definitely, to an unhealthy extent, they pray to Mary. Mary's very big in Catholicism. So I wouldn't say I've done a study, a comparative analysis on the two, but just, as I learned and read, it just it filled in all the missing parts for me. And it made me feel as though, again, I wasn't dissing what I had come from, but I just moved to the next level. I'd stepped it up. I stepped up my game. So.
Assalamu alaikum, sister. I have two questions. The first question is, after you became Muslim, what's the first and most difficult worship that you think it's heavy or difficult among the pillars of Islam? Especially that many Muslims who convert to Islam, they have never practiced this before. Salah, Siyam, Zakah, Hajj, all this stuff that may be done daily, like Salah, fasting every year in the month of Ramadan. So which one is most difficult for you? Or it's always difficult for the people who were not born as Muslims? This is the first question. And the second question is, being American and raised in this country, you know the rights of the citizens better than any immigrant of us. I'm an immigrant myself. So how do you feel about Islam being attacked everywhere and Muslims are always under fire? How can you be vocal to represent Islam in the correct manner and image, inshallah?
Okay, so let me answer the first question. I come from my dad was an opera singer and taught voice, all that time at Catholic University. My mom majored in speech and drama. We grew up in the theater. And so I was very much a free spirit who really didn't want to be chained down with things like routines and patterns. I just wanted to go kind of where the wind took me, and I've even seen how I struggle even at this point in my life with not having implemented those routines earlier, and how, subhanAllah, my husband is just so easily able to do those things. And so I would say for myself, the hardest struggle has been, the 5 prayers, just because, for 30 some odd years, I didn't, you get up when you have to get up. Oh, do I have swim team this morning? No, great, I can sleep in, or, or in the middle of the day, or especially when the time changes. Oh my gosh, when the time changes and all of a sudden you have 3 salahs in 4 hours. I mean, I'm I'm not good about watching the clock. I need, I don't know what I need. And so that, that definitely is, it's a struggle. I don't do it with as much ease as I hope I will attain at some point in my life. And then the second question, which I have now completely forgot.
The second question was about the attacks on Islam everywhere in the media and non-media, and how can you be vocal and what you can do for that?
How could I forget that question? So I remember, the first 10 years that my husband and I were together, I used to always say to him, look, honey, what Islam needs, again, because everything for me back then was an intellectual approach to everything. I'm like, look, I got the answer for you, honey. This is what you need. You need a PR agency. We're going to develop a campaign right now because clearly people don't know what's going on, and this is why they treat Muslims the way they do, because they just don't understand. They don't have, you're not presenting yourselves in the right manner. I still kind of feel that way. I remember there was an incident a number of years ago with, when was it? Anyway, there were Muslims, one of them was an imam who were in the airport. They were going to get on a plane, and they were praying in, the waiting area. And there was this big, they stopped them. And I thought to myself, wow, now, when I was younger, first of all, I wanted to be a nun. The nuns were really amazing. Some of them were mean, but most of them were amazing. But when you saw a nun, even to this day, people who see religious, people in religious attire, they immediately feel safe and warm. And I think to myself, okay, this is an even greater caliber of person. What is it that we're not communicating to people? Because you should feel that same safety and peace when you see somebody bending over to put their forehead to the ground, wherever it is. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of politics that, colors people's perception. A lot of people are not familiar with Islam. So, I sometimes think if people were learning about Christianity during like the 60s and 50s and 40s in this country, they really wouldn't have a good opinion of it. Does that answer your question?
Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Walaikum salam.
If there is no sister that needs to speak before me, maybe I can ask my question.
Any sister questions? Yes.
You said in the beginning that Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I was born Muslim and I'm still Muslim.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. But the question that the Imam gave, the first one, about the things that makes you get out of Islam, convert and then revert. The thing that I saw through your life, I think it was good that you stayed 13 years with your husband, because getting marriage is a journey by itself. You got rid of that journey, you learned it, and then you step to the other journey. The new Muslim that convert, non-Muslim that convert, some of them get married right away, and they started two journeys, difficult journeys at the same time. And I was born a Muslim, and really marriage is not easy. Because it's a new life. I felt like I was dead and I'm born again, and I was a Muslim. How about somebody who's just started a new way?
Yeah.
I think, I told you I don't have a question, but the way you went 13 years is like when Islam came to Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. 13 years, they were learning who's Allah, what is Jannah, and what is Nar.
Yeah.
You learned about your husband, and he helped you into your second journey.
Yeah. And I will, again, growing up Catholic, you don't get divorced. That's it. I mean, I remember the very first person in my family, this was my mom's cousin, who got divorced. The scandal. To this day, the scandal of that divorce. You could hate the person forever, but you may not divorce them. Because really, the institute of marriage is so much more than the players in Catholicism. However, I then come to Islam, where sometimes you see, and again, I know that it's permissible, but sometimes you see the opposite. You see people, like going into marriage and then 4 months later, it's not working out. Well, yeah, of course it's not working out. 4 months. I mean, when I think about my husband and I, 21 years, we maybe got to like a really cool roll about a year ago. For 20 years, we've been on this, roller coaster. So 4 months, yeah. And I don't know, again, in Catholicism, you've got pre-Cana. Before you even get married, you got to go hang out with the priest, spend a little time. They're going to be asking you all kinds of questions. What are your intentions? What are you going to do? You're going to baptize your kid. They're two very, very difficult journeys. And to do them both at the same time is very challenging. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Alaikum salam.
If you can give us 3 pointers for doing da'wah outreach to Catholic communities, what would they be? Thank you.
Well, I think I would certainly highlight the position of Maryam in Islam, because that is, again, for Catholics, Mary is very important. And there was a time in the Irish American community where every girl's name was Mary something. Every girl's name was Mary something. Mary Ann, Mary Pat, Mary Frances, Mary Kathleen, Mary whatever. So that would be number one. Let's see. And even the reverence for, it's interesting because I remember when the current Pope was speaking to a group, and I can't even remember what the occasion was, but he, brought up some obscure historic text where someone was speaking derogatorily about, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I remember saying to my mom how offensive that was to me, because here you have the Pope, who's the head of the church, disparaging a prophet of God. And I said, if you took the most uneducated Muslim, they would not do that. And she said, well, you can't say that. I said, absolutely, I can say that. Without a shadow of a doubt, I can tell you. Not a single one. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so Medium would be one. And it's hard. I've kind of, been out of the Catholic community for a while, and I know it's very different. I mean, now you have what you call cafeteria Catholics, and that's where you can go with your tray down the cafeteria line and kind of take what you want. Like, oh, I kind of like this part of it, but yeah, no, I'm not liking that. You can keep that, I'll take this. So, even Catholics today, I think, are being raised very differently than we were. I think just in general, Dawah, the best way to do it is just in that manner, like as a reminder, explaining to people, not being overly aggressive, not trying to, cram it down their throats. Because I will tell you that when I talk to somebody, I can tell when they see what I'm saying is true. And oftentimes the response is not one of, oh, that's lovely. It's usually one of like anger, defensiveness. People who are, oh, that's nice, or, kind of apathetic, it hasn't really touched them yet. It's the people who kind of become defensive, who know on a certain level that what you're saying is true. But again, it means that they have to do a lot of work. And so challenging them isn't always the best course of action. I think just, gently reminding people, being out there, talking about things, being open, but persistent. You don't want to go away, but you also don't want to be in their face as well. So.
Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Walaikum salam.
Inshallah, we will pray Isha at 7:30, so we'll take these questions. You can summarize the answers to these questions, because I have some other brothers that have other questions. One quick one I'd like to throw in here is, how do your children how do you handle holidays at your house with the grandparents? Must be some, you do want them, they do see their grandparents, I'm sure, but how do you handle the holidays, the secular holidays, the Christian holidays, not necessarily the Muslim holidays, but if you can summarize the questions, the answers, because we have other questions too, and we'd like to stop by 7:30, inshallah.
Okay, so holidays. Yeah, we're usually separate on holidays, religious holidays. And like I said, we're all a work in progress. It's something that, my husband and I talk about every year, and every year we come up with a different answer. And, I don't think that there's one right answer. My parents, go to church every Sunday like they have for, their entire lives. My siblings, I always tell them, I'm like, just make sure you warn me before you go to church, because if there's a lightning bolt coming down, I don't want to be anywhere near it. I can't remember the last time my siblings were in church. So again, even when they celebrate religious holidays, it's not a religious holiday. It's just like the habit. Well, we've celebrated Christmas every year for my entire life, so we're going to celebrate it again. And So usually my family celebrates it, and the kids are off with my husband doing something else. So, and again, you're constantly navigating issues like this. So we do our best. There's a question over here on the sister side.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
I
salam.
have a question.
Yeah, baby.
Did you try to let your parents or your siblings convert to Islam and teach them something about the Quran or something?
Yes, I did. I talked to them a lot. But I don't know. I guess they're not ready yet. So I make dua. That's it. Walaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Walaikum salam.
Usually, for new Muslims, the primary problem they usually have is with their parents or their family. So, I would like to know how long did it take your family to somehow accept you as a Muslim, and what strategies will you want to share with the new Muslims if you have been almost completely accepted by your family? What strategies did you put to use that you can share with the new Muslims? Because okay, I'm sorry. So I was not around when you answered it. So please, I just would like you to briefly just mention it. Sorry.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, so my parents never rejected me. Growing up, again, I mentioned that my parents are teachers, and it was very common for other languages to be spoken in my house, for people from other countries to be in our home. So the whole idea of my husband was, as a matter of fact, when we got married, they wanted to know if anybody had a problem, like between our two families, with the fact that, I'm Irish American and my husband's Ethiopian. But as they were asking, they're looking at me. And I'm like, okay, well, my family doesn't have a problem with it. As a matter of fact, it's his family who has the problem with it. My family had no issues. As I said, they weren't jumping for joy, but they were perfectly fine with my, acceptance of Islam. We really haven't. Now, what advice would I give to other people? My parents now, especially my dad, who's 85, he had his knee replaced 2 years ago, and soon, inshallah, he'll be coming to live with us. And so when you look at the respect that's, required of your parents in Islam, how could you not see the beauty of it? Even if you don't see anything else, who, as an 85-year-old, would not want to be cared for in this manner? I don't know if I have any techniques other than, again, just, trying to be the best Muslim that that one can be, and, treat your parents in the way that you've been, taught through Quran and Sunnah, but there's no tension or animosity. I love my parents very much, and they think I'm amazing.
Assalamu alaikum, sis. Unless there's a sister who has a question, I'll wait till afterwards. If there's not, then I'll ask.
Nope.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, sis. Alhamdulillah, I thought your story is very interesting, particularly related to being married to your husband for 13 years before taking Shahada. One thing that has concerned me, and I've seen this, I'm sure we've all seen this a lot, and I've seen it a lot lately, in which brothers accept Islam, and either they are already married and then their wife accepts Islam, or the brother accepts Islam, he's talking to a non-Muslim sister, she accepts Islam. But then, if the marriage doesn't work out, next thing you know, the sister is like, she's left the husband, and she leaves the deen too.
Right.
How do you see this as differently in your life, and what recommendation would you give for sisters who haven't accepted Islam but are married to Muslims, or talking to Muslim brothers about the issue of getting married in the deen? Because I've seen situations also where it affects the children, where, you know, because they break up, the sister leaves Islam and looks to take the children out of Islam with her.
Yeah, so, you know, as I mentioned, if I had accepted Islam for my husband, it would have been immediately. It was really important that it was for me. And, you know, Allahu Alam, I mean, if people are, you know, I mean, clearly Allah has put a love in my heart for my husband that inshallah never ends. And so, you know, we're ultimately not the responsible parties for whether people stay together or not, but I think as an ummah it's important, again, that we establish relationships. So, and I know sisters often struggle, as I did, because, you know, I mean, I got all kinds of freedoms. I'm not giving up anything. You know, I don't need somebody telling me, you know, what I have to wear or when I have to get up, or, but when you spend time in the ummah, you see that, you know, for a little extra effort up front, that you benefit in ways you cannot even possibly imagine in the long run. And there is so much that I have gained just from the experience of being amongst the sisters, who I have to say are, they can never get the props that they truly deserve, because they are the most humble and patient of people that I have ever met. Even when I walked around the school, I would meet people who I just thought were so amazing, and they would often think, oh no, I didn't do that well enough. And I thought, are you kidding? Like, and so it's just really important to be, you know, even, you know, people who I've known who were in similar situations, you know, they marry their husband, they convert, the marriage breaks up, and they might not necessarily say they're not Muslim anymore, but they're not practicing. And so much of that, when I see it, it happens in people who have not become part of the community. And when I say part of the community, that means that you are interacting with your Muslim sister or your Muslim brother on a daily basis. Daily. It has to happen. So.
Assalamu alaikum, sister. This is inshallah the last question, because we have to pray Isha at 7:30, as you announced. The question is very simple, and it may be a funny question, but it came many times to the Imam about the dilemma of changing name after becoming a Muslim. So I noticed that you didn't change your name. So how do you feel about changing the name? And if you choose to change your pre-Islamic name, what would be the name that you may choose? Thank you.
So, yeah, like I mentioned before, you know, there are so many, well, all things about Islam are perfect, but it just worked out really well. You know, I was married before, and I did change my name because that's what you were supposed to do. And after that marriage ended, I decided I was never changing my last name, my name again. And I don't, you know, see, I mean, Moira is Gaelic for Mary, for Medium, so there's no need to change it. It's a beautiful name. And I'm not one on, again, it's one of those things that, you know, as I came in and I learned more, and, you know, people were changing their names, and I would often think to myself, okay, well, why are you changing your name? I mean, I have a very, very dear friend who, like myself, raised very Catholic, and she converted to Orthodox Judaism. And so she changed her name because, you know, she wasn't as fully accepted in their community, you know, with her non, you know, Jewish name. But, you know, I always question that. I'm like, why do I have to change my, like, there's nothing wrong with my name. It's not offensive. You know, it's a beautiful name. So I would not change my name.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Sister Moira. You did a great job. We appreciate you. I've known you and your family maybe, what, 10 years?
Yeah, and your beautiful daughter.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate that. And we hope your presentation would inspire us to really do a good da'wah, to reach out to the Catholic communities. And we have it taped. And so, inshallah, many will see and learn from you. And inshallah, a lot of people will accept Islam through that.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much. Sisters, you can do your salats here on this side if you choose to, or you can go back if you like. They can pray here. There's enough space, and we will move the chairs and do what we need to do to make you comfortable, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. And thank you, brothers, for coming also, and sisters. And we will have next month we will have Imam Talib. Imam Talib is the Imam of the masjid in Capitol Heights. He will be here, and then following that, we will have a couple other brothers who will be presenting. So many of you know Imam Talib, and so inshallah we will see you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.